In the early hours of a dusty morning in Borno State, in northeastern Nigeria, the silence of the landscape seemed to hold years of accumulated tension. The region, marked by intermittent columns of smoke, makeshift camps, and routes of forced displacement, has for more than a decade been a recurring stage of insurgent violence. Within that context, a military operation carried out in 2026 began to emerge as a turning point, not because of immediate spectacle, but because of what it represented strategically, institutionally, and humanly. The elimination of a key commander of the Islamic State West Africa province, known as ISWAP, the name by which he was identified, Bakogorei, had circulated for years in intelligence reports, testimonies from displaced civilians, and documentation by international organizations. His figure, wrapped in opacity and fragmented accounts, had been associated with multiple attacks against civilian populations, military convoys, and rural communities across the Lake Chad Basin and the Sambisa forest region. His death, confirmed by Nigerian military sources and later reported by outlets such as the BBC and Al Jazeera, was presented as a significant achievement under Operation Hadin Kai, the Nigerian state's primary effort to contain the insurgency in the region. To understand the magnitude of this event, it is necessary to step back and examine the environment in which figures like Bakogorei emerged and consolidated power. Northeastern Nigeria has long faced structural challenges: high levels of poverty, limited access to formal education, weak institutions, and an inconsistent state presence in rural areas. These factors, combined with religious and economic tensions, created fertile ground for the expansion of non-state armed groups. ISWAP, a splinter faction of Boko Haram, emerged in 2016 following internal disputes over leadership and strategy. Unlike its predecessor, ISWAP at times adopted a more pragmatic approach toward local communities, attempting to establish rudimentary forms of parallel governance. However, this did not translate into a meaningful reduction in violence. On the contrary, the group maintained significant operational capacity, carrying out coordinated attacks on military bases, and using tactics such as ambushes, improvised explosive devices, and targeted kidnappings. Within this framework, Bakogorei's role began to gain prominence. Although details about his origins remain limited and in some cases contradictory, it is believed that his rise within ISWAP's structure was tied to his ability to coordinate operations in difficult terrain and maintain cohesion among dispersed cells. Intelligence reports cited by analysts from the International Crisis Group suggest that he played a key role in logistical planning for attacks in areas surrounding Lake Chad, a region characterized by shifting geography and limited accessibility. His leadership, according to testimonies collected by humanitarian organizations, was marked by a combination of internal discipline and external violence. Communities under ISWAP influence were subjected to systems of control that included forced taxation, restrictions on movement, and constant surveillance. Those who resisted or were suspected of collaborating with the government faced severe reprisals. In this sense, the commander represented not only a military threat, but also a symbol of coercive control over vast areas. The Nigerian state's response has evolved over time. Initially focused on conventional military operations, the strategy gradually incorporated elements of intelligence, regional cooperation, and advanced technology. The establishment of Operation Hadin Kai marked an effort to consolidate these approaches under a unified command, aiming to improve coordination between ground forces, air units, and intelligence services. Within this framework, locating high-value targets became a priority. According to military sources cited by The Guardian Nigeria, tracking Bakogorei was a result of months of intelligence gathering, including aerial surveillance using drones, intercepted communications, and analysis of movement patterns in rural zones. The geography of the Northeast, with its dense vegetation and uncharted routes, posed a constant challenge for armed forces. The operation that led to the commander's death was not, according to these sources, a chance occurrence. It was a result of careful planning and a gradual accumulation of data that allowed the identification of a specific camp in a remote area. Once the location was confirmed, ground units were deployed with instructions to advance discreetly, avoiding detection. The execution of the assault, according to the official military statement, was swift and coordinated. Forces surrounded the area and launched an attack that caught the militants off guard. Resistance was limited, suggesting that the element of surprise was decisive. The camp was destroyed, and among the bodies recovered, the sought-after commander was identified. Confirmation of his death triggered varied reactions. In communities affected by years of violence, reports described expressions of relief and cautious hope. However, analysts and international observers emphasize the need to interpret this event within a broader context. The elimination of insurgent leaders, while significant, does not necessarily translate into an immediate or sustained reduction in violence. From an institutional perspective, the operation represents an example of improved intelligence capabilities and coordination. The use of drones for surveillance, in particular, reflects adaptation to both terrain and enemy tactics. Likewise, the speed of execution suggests a more efficient chain of command and greater integration between units. Nevertheless, it also raises questions about the sustainability of such achievements. Recent history in the region shows that groups like ISWAP have been able to regenerate after losing key leaders. Their decentralized structure, combined with the ability to recruit new members, allows them to adapt to leadership changes. The death of Bakogorei could trigger, at least in the short term, a period of uncertainty within ISWAP. The absence of a central figure may lead to internal disputes over control of resources and strategic direction. Such dynamics, documented in other insurgent contexts, can weaken cohesion and reduce operational capacity. However, they can also result in fragmentation, potentially making the group even more unpredictable and harder to contain. The Nigerian state, aware of these dynamics, has indicated its intention to intensify operations during this period. The logic is to exploit potential internal disorganization in order to dismantle other cells and reduce the group's response capacity. While this strategy is coherent from a military standpoint, it requires careful balance to avoid collateral damage and maintain civilian trust. At the same time, the challenge of addressing the structural causes that have facilitated the insurgency remains. Reports from the World Bank and the United Nations have highlighted the link between poverty, lack of opportunity, and vulnerability to recruitment by armed groups. In many communities in the Northeast, options for young people are limited, increasing the risk that they may be drawn in by promises of belonging, income, or protection. The social dimension of the conflict, therefore, cannot be ignored. Rebuilding infrastructure, expanding access to education and basic services, and creating economic opportunities are essential components in reducing the potential support base for groups like ISWAP. Without these elements, military gains risk being temporary. Another relevant aspect is information management. In conflict settings, misinformation can undermine institutional efforts and generate distrust among the population. Nigerian authorities have emphasized the importance of citizens relying on verified sources and avoiding the spread of rumors. This reflects an understanding that the fight against insurgency is not only conducted on physical terrain, but also in the informational domain. The role of the soldier, in this context, takes on particular significance. Troops deployed in the Northeast operate under difficult conditions, facing not only the constant risk of attack, but also logistical limitations and prolonged separation from their families. Recognition of these sacrifices is part of the official narrative, but has also been highlighted by independent observers as essential to maintaining morale and operational legitimacy. At the same time, there are criticisms and concerns. Reports from human rights organizations have documented cases of abuses by security forces in the region. While not directly linked to the specific operation, these findings underscore the importance of ensuring that military actions adhere to legal and ethical standards. The legitimacy of the state's fight against insurgency depends, in large part, on its ability to operate within the rule of law. The elimination of a commander like Bakogorei, therefore, should be understood as one element within a broader strategy. It is an indicator of operational capability and progress on certain fronts, but not a definitive solution to the conflict. Experiences from other regions, from the Sahel to the Middle East, show that removing insurgent leaders is only one part of a much larger process. As news of the operation spread, public debate in Nigeria began to reflect these complexities. Analysts, academics, and citizens expressed both satisfaction with the outcome and caution regarding its implications. This diversity of perspectives highlights the multifaceted nature of the conflict and the need for multidimensional approaches. Ultimately, The underlying question is how to transform tactical successes into sustainable strategic gains. Can the Nigerian state consolidate its presence in areas previously controlled by insurgents? Will it implement policies that reduce the conditions fueling recruitment? Can it maintain military pressure without compromising civilian rights? There are no simple answers. What does seem clear is that the elimination of figures like Bakogorei opens a window of opportunity, an opportunity that, if leveraged through a combination of military, political, and social actions, could contribute to deeper changes in the dynamics of the conflict. Meanwhile, in the communities of northeastern Nigeria, daily life continues to be shaped by a mix of resilience and caution. Relief over the removal of a figure associated with violence is tempered by awareness that the path to stability is long and complex. The memory of years of conflict remains present, along with the need for solutions that extend beyond the battlefield. The development of events in the coming months will be decisive. ISWAP's response, the state's ability to consolidate its gains, and the evolution of socioeconomic conditions in the region will all be key factors. International observers will continue to monitor the situation, recognizing that northeastern Nigeria is a critical point within a broader regional context. For those observing from afar, the story offers consistent lesson. The fight against insurgency is not resolved through military victories alone. It requires a deep understanding of local dynamics, sustained investment in development, and political that extends beyond immediate cycles. In this landscape, the elimination of Bakogorei stands as a significant chapter, but not a final one. A reminder of what progress can look like, and at the same time, of the challenges that remain. The narrative that follows will depend on the decisions made moving forward, both on the battlefield and beyond it. And it is precisely at that crossroads where the future of the region is being shaped, a future that, while uncertain, continues to be defined by analysis, debate, and, above all, the hope of those who have lived for years under the shadow of conflict.